Welcome one, welcome all, and welcome back inside number 9. This time I'm going to continue my honest review series of Steve Pemberton and Reece Shearsmith's black comedy anthology with my full breakdown of series 3. Now, I have already reviewed the series opener, The Devil of Christmas, as its own individual video, which if you haven't seen already, you may want to watch it before you carry on with the rest of this review. So, in that case, I'm going to now cover the remaining 5 episodes of Series 3, starting with Episode 2. The bill. I'm sure we've all been in that situation before where we argue who pays the bill at a restaurant, and generally people try to argue themselves out of paying. But what happens when the opposite occurs, and the argument involves everyone saying why they should be the one to pay? This scenario comes straight out of Pemberton and Shearsmith's personal experiences, having overheard this type of argument while in a restaurant from a nearby table, and they wanted to expand that idea into a number 9 episode. Seated at the table are Pemberton and Shearsmith, along with their friends played by Jason Watkins and Philip Glenister. When it comes to settling the bill, Watkins puts in his exact amount spent on himself plus a 10% tip. Pemberton wants to pay the bill in full. Shearsmith wants to also pay in full because he invited Glenister, and Glenister wants to settle it as a treat to his northern friends. The squabbling gets out of hand when Shearsmith says he'll pay now and let Pemberton get the next one, which he realizes is a much bigger party, therefore would be paying more money. The idea of Pemberton and Shearsmith splitting the bill between them is shunned off when they suggest Watkins should pay too, making it a 3-way payment. Watkins, however, is tight-fisted and only wants to pay what he himself ordered, and doesn't think he should pay extra for other people's greed. All of these arguments and counter-arguments are very real and are things that we have all likely experienced before, like buying a round of drinks with mates. What if your round is cheaper or more expensive than the other rounds? What if you don't want another drink yet but everyone else does? What if at the time you want to stop drinking, it's your turn to carry on? Trying to be mathematical and pinpoint accurate about the balance is what can send financially struggling people off in a frenzy, while making more well-off members of the party put on peer pressure and accuse you of tight-fistedness. Or they can overstep with their wealth and be a cash cow, making the less well-off people feel guilty. It's money and mind games combining forces into a battle of wits, loyalty, and moral staking. It even gets to the point where it's character assessing and personality judgmentalism. It constantly spirals deeper into comical debate. But the brakes get slammed hard when Shearsmith reveals he has an inoperable brain tumour with 3 months to live at best, and that's why he wants to pay the bill. But it's all a lie. Things get so mental that the waitress even says the meal is on the house. But even then they refuse to go about not paying, and Shearsmith and Pemberton challenge each other to a game of nerve. You know, the game where you put your hand on a table and try and not hit it with a knife. The game goes horribly wrong when a fight breaks out and the waitress accidentally gets her throat slashed. When Shearsmith uses an old contact from prison for a cleanup job, which is gonna cost 200 grand, yet another argument kicks off about who is gonna pay for what. Then the twist occurs. All the lads are having Glenister on. Knowing he's the wealthiest guy in the room, they decided to set him up with a con in order to get a little bit of his fortune. But now the con is bust, it's failed, and the crew still want cash, so they employ Glenister to be a part of the squad and see if they can pull off another con. The bill is an incredible episode. The script is utter perfection with razor-sharp turns taking place rapidly. The bickering between all the actors involved feels so genuine, and the baseline of logic that lays the foundations of the con works so well. All 4 of the main actors at the table are amazing here. Their chemistry is magnetic, and they all bounce off each other with such elasticity. The bill really did trap lightning in a bottle, since the majority of the episode has the characters sat at a table, and everything progresses based purely on the dialogue, and that's really a superpower Shearsmith and Pemberton have as writers. This one has a big amount of love love from the number 9 fandom, and there's really no wonder why. It's like they've done their own version of an episode of Hustle, which ironically starred Philip Glenister's brother, Robert. Top marks all around for this one. Episode 3, The Riddle of the Sphinx. This episode is a real treat for fans of the cryptic world of puzzles, brain teasers, and most importantly, crosswords, which are a particular passion of Pemberton's, having written crosswords in newspapers in real life, including ones prior to the air date of Riddle of the Sphinx that included some clues about the episode itself. This episode is a love letter to the type of television where you're constantly trying to solve the puzzle of where the narrative is heading. Here, a young Welsh girl, Nina, breaks into a professor's quarters in the middle of the night. This professor is played by Pemberton, and he is a mastermind of cryptic crosswords using the pseudonym the Sphinx, a reference to Greek mythology, particularly the story of Oedipus. Nina just wants to get some help on how to understand cryptic crosswords better in order to impress her boyfriend, and Pemberton indulges in the challenge. After learning Nina's boyfriend studies architecture, he sets up an elaborate clue for the word architecture and explains how one would go about attempting to crack it. It makes your head spin at the sheer speed he breaks it down, and here lies an underlying Achilles heel I believe Riddle of the Sphinx possesses, but it's not strictly a bad issue. If you're not a person who gets cryptic crosswords in the first place, like me, on your first watch or even on your second, you're really gonna have to work hard to keep switched on in order to follow a lot of this episode's conversations. However, after your third or fourth watch and beyond, you're a lot more knowledgeable on the cryptic, and so can follow it more easily and appreciate other finer details to the production and script rather than missing out on key details because you're still scratching your head thinking about scenes from 5 minutes ago. It warrants multiple watches, which only improves the episode over time, but means that your first handful of watches could prove to be tough. The Sphinx offers Nina the chance of looking at his next crossword and allows her to try and crack it herself, with a little help here and there. The chemistry between the two is excellent, a lot of comedic timing from both. Their conversation really does keep you switched on, and they share a lot of great moments together. They have a really solid dynamic that carries the episode well. Also, the atmosphere is lovely, a small, dimly lit room, heavy rain outside, while two strangers, a learner and a teacher, cross paths in a battle of wits and knowledge with the goal of beating a crossword. It's such a cool setup for a number 9 episode, and you do start to feel like you're in the room as a bystander trying to work out the same puzzles. Things start to get even more confusing outside of the crossword though, when the Sphinx starts to clock onto Nina that she's been lying about who she is all along. He intentionally asks her fake questions to see how she answers them, knowing that there will always be a wrong answer to suss her out. She honestly admits that she just wants to learn, and without a decent cover story, the professor wouldn't have taken her seriously and whet her appetite in the first place. But then the alibi shatters when Nina breaks her character. She's poisoned the professor and is actually a genius who fully understands the cryptic and solves the rest of the crossword effortlessly. Her reasoning for spiking the professor with the poison of a pufferfish is because 6 years ago her brother, Simon, faced the Sphinx in a crossword challenge and won, but the Sphinx challenged one of Simon's answers, that the letter U he wrote on an answer looked more like a V, in order to disqualify him and keep his reputation as the best crossword brain. But in the aftermath, unbeknownst to the professor, Simon hung himself because of it. Then, holy balls, another fork in the road, the professor hasn't been poisoned. Nina can't believe it, and now the Sphinx is back on top to explain what the hell is going on. He swapped the cups. It's Nina who's poisoned. Shearsmith is summoned to pop over with the vaccine, who was also in on the poisoning, having helped Nina extract the pufferfish poison, then went straight to the professor to inform him of her plans. He knew about Nina's plan all this time, so went along with it to punish her. However, upon arrival, Shearsmith reveals that there actually isn't an antidote for the toxin, and Nina has less than half an hour to live. But Shearsmith wants the Sphinx to follow in the footsteps of his Greek myth namesake, and wants him to eat a piece of Nina's flesh, as in the original myth, the Sphinx devoured anyone who failed to answer its riddle. And to make matters worse, the crossword being solved this entire time contains multiple answers relating to the situation, such as mystery mystery guest, asphyxiation, and pufferfish. The crossword now acts like a confession to the crime. Shearsmith cuts a chunk of flesh from Nina's arse and pan-fries it. Layer after layer is unveiled constantly, like how Simon, the boy who hung himself, was his son, meaning that Nina is his daughter. Wait, they're not Shearsmith's kids, they're Pemberton's kids. What is going on? There are twists and turns that completely redirect the narrative within 2 or 3 lines of dialogue, and it shifts so harshly. In the climax, the professor, realizing that his son killed himself because of his own actions, and his daughter is dying on the floor in front of him, the professor shoots himself, blasting blood all over his final crossword. This episode has a labyrinth of plot to deconstruct, but what I can say is this. In terms of the half-hour episode length number 9 follows, I don't think there's ever been a script packing as much as this. Not a single line is wasted. Everything has a purpose, every clue has a meaning, every action has a consequence, and once Shearsmith turns up, the ending in sight constantly blurs and refocuses to the point you never know where it's going to head. At the time I originally watched this episode, I was a little bit against this final act because I thought it was being pretentious. By making so many changes in quick succession, it felt like the episode was trying to be too clever. But this was the complete wrong standpoint to take on Riddle of the Sphinx. The craziness of the plot only gels with the cryptic crossword theme. Yes, there's a crossword, but the character relationships have their own clues and need to be carefully broken down to understand who means what to which character. The entire script is cryptic and requires watching again and again so that each time you understand it a little bit more until eventually you've cracked it. And I think that thematically that is a fantastic way to merge with the main overarching concept. I'm not a fan of the RIP NHS at the very end though. NHS is seemingly the initials of the professor, so RIP NHS is that it's his death at the very end. But we all know what is obviously the real case is that at the time this episode was written, it was very much up in the air that the NHS was going to dismantle, and this feels like Shearsmith and Pemberton were having a wisecrack towards it. To me, this just dates the episode a bit, and it's a bit too meta, detracting from the professor's suicide. However, overall, this is an impressive piece of television. Take some time with it and give it a few watches. You'll definitely appreciate it more each time. The 3 cast members are superb and worth the price of admission alone. Episode 4, Empty Orchestra. Time for another unpopular one. You know Inside Number 9 is notorious for its twist endings? Well, the idea for Empty Orchestra was to have an episode that doesn't have a twist ending. Ooh, what a twist. That's ironic. The theme here is kind of the same thing Bumblebee does in the Transformers movies, where the lyrics of songs are used to tell a story. The story, you ask? Yep, it's got one of those, and it's as mundane as this show gets. Cue a group of co-workers on a night out in a private karaoke booth. Everyone getting hammered, singing together, where the relationships are explored between the characters, utilizing pop music ballads as a medium of storytelling along with dialogue. First up to the booth is Shearsmith, dressed as a sumo wrestler, who starts to sing Don't You Want Me by the Human League, as he's joined by a woman dressed as Amy Winehouse, and the two share a little smooch. So right away, it's like Shearsmith is singing to her, Don't You Want Me? You get the idea. Upon the arrival of another woman, dressed as Brittany, it seems like this partnership is a secret fling due to their body language and the emphasis on the lyrics. Pemberton then enters the fray, along with a deaf girl named Janet, dressed as Boy George. Pemberton's character, a brummie named Roger, is getting a promotion at work, so the team are celebrating the occasion with a sing-song. Speaking of, next song, Saturday Night by Wigfield. The genius lyrical subtext here? It's Saturday night. Michael Jackson shows up, Dwayne, with a bag containing one of multiple pills ranging from hard drugs to an orange Tic Tac, and everyone picks one at random. There's rumours going around that Pemberton is planning of sacking one of the team, which we learn while the Wham rap by Wham kicks in with the main lyric You Got Soul on the Dole, implying one of the workers will end up on the dole. Pemberton orders himself a full tray of shots, which is just ace. The girls play a prank on Janet, the deaf girl, texting trusting her with Dwayne's phone that he likes her. Pemberton's turn now, singing Since You've Been Gone by Rainbow, which is a banger, as Dwayne reveals all the pills he dished out were Tic Tacs. Pemberton is singing Since You've Been Gone as he's in the process of being divorced. There's a love triangle going on between Shea Smith, Amy and Brittany, and they sing I Know Him So Well from the musical Chess, with each girl strategically trying to win Shea Smith, like a game of chess, both arguing that they know him so well. Janet finally gets up to sing a song for Dwayne, Only You by Yazoo, implying that it's only Dwayne that she cares about, but the penny drops that his feelings for her were the prank text. A team talk takes place where Pemberton reveals the person leaving the team is himself, and he appoints Britney Spears as the new manager. A hen party storms the room, and in the midst of the chaos, Janet gets her own back on all the pranking. So for clarity here, Shea Smith is Greg. Greg is with Britney Spears, aka Fran, but is cheating on Fran with Amy Winehouse, aka Connie. Connie has been an utter bitch to Janet the entire episode, so for revenge, she tells Fran about Greg and Connie's fling, leading Fran to sack them both. At the time, the lyrics Fire Away are sung in David Guetta and Sia's Titanium. Clever synchronization there. Janet gets together with Dwayne and the party rattles on into the night. Curtain down. You know what, right? I really enjoy this. It's vastly different to anything else in the show and plays out like a standard work night out. All the relationships between the characters feel so authentic though. There's no darkness, no death, no horror elements, no huge plot twists, just half an hour about people doing karaoke and having a chat about work. It's the links between the characters and how they develop over the course of the episode that are engaging. I think the main bow that ties the episode together up neatly is Janet. She's played by Emily Howlett, who is genuinely a deaf actress. Sadly, she hasn't had much more acting work other than in the run-of-the-mill BBC shows like Doctors and Casualty, and I know that the acting world is an extremely difficult and limiting space to work in for somebody who is hearing impaired. But there's something so raw and captivating about her. She's got bags of potential to be a great physical performer, as her facial expressions and just this aura around her are fantastic, stealing every scene that she is in, and becomes definitely the highlight of this episode. Empty Orchestra is a much lighter affair than the number 9 norm, but that only makes it super refreshing and cleanses the palate after how much brutality and bleakness often accompanies episodes. I totally understand why people will adamantly hate this one, but genuinely I enjoy it. The best part for me, other than Howlett, is how cleverly the songs are interwoven with the plot. It makes you study the songs as you're hearing them and implying them to the situation to establish thematic links, and it makes for a fun experience simply from an analytical stance. I had a lot of fun with Empty Orchestra for a one-off type episode. It's a really welcome addition, and one that I liked a hell of a lot more on subsequent watches. Episode 5, Diddle Diddle Dumpling. And now it's time for one of Inside Number 9's most bizarre and outlandish plots. While running one morning, Shea Smith comes across a random leather shoe lying on a patch of grass outside his house. What size, you ask? Oh, you shouldn't have. That's right, the number 9 this week is a shoe. Shea Smith's doing well for himself as his missus is Keely Hawes, but he can't stop talking about this shoe. It's so random and out of place for a single pristine condition black leather shoe to be randomly on the pavement outside his house, and he can't let it go. Later on in the evening, he brings the shoe in from outside and keeps it on the dinner table. Even while eating dinner, he can't take his eyes off the shoe. His daughter then uses the shoe as a car for one of her dolls, but he kicks off on a mad one just because she's touched it. He even goes around putting flyers around the area that one black man's shoe has been lost. Not the most carefully considered wording, but it's just making a mountain out of a molehill. This sudden obsession with literally a shoe just keeps going on and on. It's as if he found a 24-carat diamond in the street. 3 months later, Pemberton comes around, a co-worker of his wife, and he tells him about the shoe. He has all sorts of theories about where the the shoe has came from and who it belongs to. It's like a full-on mystery investigation, but unable to find the shoe to show Pemberton, his wife reveals that she threw the shoe away after Shearsmith set up websites and collaborated with the police to try and get CCTV footage. A challenge is set that Shearsmith can't go 2 minutes without talking about the shoe, a challenge which he fails horrendously. Can't even get through 2 minutes. He even winds up on a national radio show with Danny Baker talking about the shoe. It's bonkers. A man comes to the house saying that the shoe belongs to him, and Shearsmith asks him for the size and does a photograph test of the tread patterns for him to pick the right one, like a memory test. Everything checks out though, and Shearsmith is genuinely gutted at the idea of letting the shoe go, but he ultimately does. Now, seemingly on the mend, Shearsmith comes home to his daughter rehearsing a performance of the song Diddle Diddle Dumpling, which includes the lyric "one shoe off and one shoe on," which triggers some Vietnam-esque PTSD in him. A few weeks later, his wife Louise comes home and finds the shoe outside, which surprises her. But also Shearsmith's done some digging and found photographs belonging to Louise of her in her college days, and in the photo is the man who collected the shoe, plus a receipt for an identical pair of shoes. It's like she set everything up in order to get the shoe away from Shearsmith as soon as possible and close that chapter of his life. And then we come to understand exactly why he's been so committed to the shoe. We learn that they didn't just have a daughter, they had male and female twins, but the male died. This means that Shearsmith has a need to see the shoe be reunited with its other half, due to it reminding him of the breaking up of a pair via the death of a child. It's as if the shoe story is a coping mechanism for him. Then when Louise notices blood on his body, Shearsmith admits that he tracked Ted, the man in the photo, down and reclaimed the shoe with force. Police sirens coming towards the house, and on a family photo of Shearsmith holding the twins, he is wearing the same pair of black shoes. Honestly, I really don't know what to make of this one. I can't tell if its abstract nature is genius or not. It's such a wonderfully weird concept, and I couldn't for a second fathom the subtext or meaning of it. I get the vibe that it's a commentary on obsessions and coping mechanisms, or a spin on OCD, but other than that, Diddle Diddle Dumpling is a super difficult one to break down. Even the title is very loose on what it actually means for the overall episode, meaning even that has a difficult to identify double entendre. Sure, the song mentions shoes, but that's literally the only link. What I will say is Shearsmith is at his best in this one. He puts in a shift, especially on the emotional side at the tail end of the episode. I don't know how I feel about the idea of him murdering the man or seriously injuring him to claim the shoe back. It's a little bit of a tagged on bonus twist that detracts from the emotional bombshell of the child's death reveal. Surely that should be enough of a hitter. Let the man grieve and use the shoe's symbolism as a means. Let him be tormented by his emotions and his loss, but don't have him kill another innocent person to preserve it. It just removes some impact, ironically, when it tries to inject more of it. Overall, Diddle Diddle Dumpling is one of number 9's more art house style episodes where critics will have a field day trying to apply theory to it when deep down, it's a 50-50 shot whether it means something deeper or if it's just an oddball little tale of a man fixated with a lost shoe. Some solid acting here, but for me the idea was just the wrong side of strange, whereby I didn't feel positively engaged. Rather, I was a bit alienated by the whole affair, and at several stages it left me in a bit of a muddle, wondering where on earth they were going with it. Perhaps this is one I'll need to come back to a couple more times. Episode 6. Private View. And now we finally arrive at our last episode of the series, and it's back to the traditional horror finale, as per series 1 and 2. The number 9 in question this time round is an industrial-style art gallery. The lads manage to swing Peter Kay for a cameo, but is immediately picked off when an unknown assailant pushes him onto one of the pieces, a throne with 2 blades sticking out of the seat. Some guests arrive at the Private View, named Fragments by the artist Elliot Quinn. These These guests initially include a Z-list celebrity and an art critic, played by Shea Smith. The hostess of the gallery, played by Montserrat Lombard, who I know as Shaz in Ashes to Ashes, is incredibly icy and can't miss an opportunity to sarcastically put down the guests she encounters. Then Pemberton arrives, along with Fiona Shaw, and soon after a blind woman played by Felicity Kendall. Now everyone has arrived, a projection of Elliot Quinn appears on a blank bust and says that he died 3 years ago, with everyone being personally invited. Everyone tries working out why they've been invited, as none of the guests know each other with very little in common. Shea Smith and the Dumpling stumble across Peter Kay's dead body. Then another corpse arrives on the scene, lying dead in the lift. It's the hostess. Dumpling takes a swig of champagne, but it's not champagne, it's something a lot deadlier. The blind lady hides in the bogs, and then we see who our killer afoot is. It's Fiona Shaw. This entire time she's been a daft dinner lady with loads of wisecracks, but she's the one causing the damage, and she gouges out the blind lady's eyes. The remaining survivors start to notice a link that everyone invited has had some kind of operation or work done on their bodies, such as a heart or lung transplant. Pemberton starts thinking Shea Smith is suspicious, so knocks him out, but then Fiona picks him off with a plastic bag. Waking up in a chair, Shea Smith learns that Elliot Quinn was Fiona's son and died 3 years ago from a brain tumour. She's seeking revenge because everyone that had their transplant is still abusing themselves directly. But the twist is, everyone's transplants have all come from Elliot Quinn's body. Peter Kay had Elliot's kidney but gave himself diabetes by eating too much. Pemberton had Elliot's lung but still smoked an e-cig. The Dumpling overcompensatingly drinks alcohol despite it being Elliot's liver that was transplanted into her. And the blind lady's replacement corneas also belong to Elliot, which she uses to write drivel publications. Even the hostess has tattoos which have been put over a skin transplant from a fire she started herself, yet still sullied Elliot's skin with self-pitying ink. Shea Smith has Elliot's heart, despite being a heartless critic, which Shea Smith admits is a bit of a stretch. However, he's still deemed undeserving of the organ. Fiona wants her son's heart back, and with a syringe goes to get it. We fade to black, but then we cut back to the studio, now filled with press and a heart in a jar. Shea Smith is still alive, so whose heart is it? Did he manage to break free and kill Fiona Shaw? Nice little ending this, and a good little episode all around. Even though they're not listed as direct influences, I can't help but make the comparisons to the giallo horror genre, a form of horror exported from Italy, popular especially in the 70s and 80s. There's the use of really colourful light, seen in films such as Suspiria and Black Sabbath. A lot of POV kills by a killer with leather gloves, very commonplace. There's a theme surrounding art, also seen in films like Deep Red and The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. There's a solid kill count where everyone dies in a really inventive way, especially the opening kill, which is generally the most memorable death and sets the tone of the film. Here it's Peter Kay falling onto a knife chair, a fall leading to impalement, reminiscent of the opening of Kill Baby Kill. Then the twist of having generally a female killer with a symbolic motive comes to the forefront. Seemingly a lot of connections, despite not even perhaps being a direct influence. However, other main influences that we do know of are Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None, which sees a random assortment of people invited to an island that are picked off one by one. Theatre of Blood, a 1973 British horror film and a personal favourite of Shea Smith's, was also a main influence. Other than the organ transplant plot, it's very much a run around corridors episode with a couple of kills, but there's a lot of gags in there to fill up the space, and both Fiona Shaw and Morgana Robinson as Carrie, the Big Brother celeb, are particularly great. It's a lovely blend of horror and humour, with some nice gory moments not seen too often on Inside Number 9. Overall, it's a fun and graphic way to close off Series 3. So there we go, my complete honest breakdown of Series 3 is now completed. My favourite this time round is one I haven't mentioned in this particular video. Yep, it's The Devil of Christmas. But if you want to talk about this particular video, I'd have to say Riddle of the Sphinx. As for worst, it's quite hard, you know. Most people would be inclined to say Empty Orchestra, but I find myself really liking it somehow. It's gotta come down to Diddle Diddle Dumpling or Private View, and on the basis I had a lot more fun with Private View, I'll say Diddle Diddle Dumpling, purely because of how utterly baffling it was and how I think it dropped the ball at the end by pushing a graphic twist when it wasn't strictly needed. What are your faves and least faves of Series 3? If you want to check out my thoughts on more Number 9, you can find my full breakdowns of Series 1, 2, and 6 available now on the channel. And you can also join me next time round when I will give my honest review of Series 4. Until then, Ghoul Gang, if you've enjoyed this video and haven't already, the absolute best Number 9 you could possibly enter is our subscriber base by clicking that really gorgeous looking red thingamajig down below. And why not check out some of our other content on the channel, such as our Nightmare Fuels or our weekly Friday Fright Time horror movie reviews. Have fun searching, and I shall see you all next time inside Number 9.